friends, Kyle here. Welcome back to the channel. And today, wherever you're watching this video, I hope you're staying healthy and whole, especially in the season that we're living in. Well, today I'm really excited for this video. Really excited because today I want to talk about this coffee grinder right here. I know we've been talking about coffee grinders a lot on this channel lately. I bought this about 6 to 8 weeks ago and I've been using it almost every day. And while a lot of coffee grinders have got me excited, I don't think there's been a single coffee grinder that's got me as excited as this one right here. Now, for those who don't know, this is the optional LAGOM P64. And I know that might sound familiar because recently I actually reviewed this right here. Now, this is the optional LAGOM Mini, a great grinder with stepless adjustments, under 500 bucks. Fantastic. And Optional really is doing some cool things. Now, this grinder preceded it. This is the P64, and for a while it was kind of their flagship. Now they also have the P100, a more expensive grinder with even bigger burrs, but this is easily their most popular option. But first, before we dive into this, let's go over some of the specs on this grinder. For those who aren't aware, like I already mentioned, this is a flat burr grinder. It's 64 millimeter flat burrs. That's very important, but 64 millimeter flat burrs are super popular in the industry right now. There are so many different options and so many people making new burr sets. You've got Fellow with the Ode. You've got the DF64. You've got this grinder right here. Mazer's older grinders have the 64 millimeter flat burrs, and it goes on and on and on. And that's really exciting because what we can do then is take one grinder and have multiple different outcomes for its coffee based on the burst that you put in there. Now, this also has a stepless adjustment system, almost similar to something like you'd find on like the `𝙤𝙤𝙣 or that LAGOM Mini. And I really like this. It's smooth, it's nice to use, it's intuitive. You can use it for espresso, filter coffee, no problems there. It also has a hopper of 40 grams. No issues with popcorning. It has a little disc here to prevent popcorning. This also grinds into a dose cup. And again, I'm gonna say this a lot, it's very similar to that `𝙤𝙤𝙣. You know, this one is different, but it's heavy, it's thick, it matches the grinder, and it's anodized aluminum. On the side here, we've got the power switch, which powers up its 300 watt brushless motor that has variable RPMs that can be adjusted on the dial on the other side of the grinder. Now, this has a option of going from 300 RPM up to 1400 RPM, and that's really exciting. That opens up a lot of possibilities for how we can brew coffee and the profiles and distribution of those coffee grounds for said coffee. Super cool. We won't dive too much into that in this video because that's gonna be a future video in comparing both this grinder and the Weber Workshop Keys variable RPM options. If you wanna watch that, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. And other than that, that's really the grinder. It's got forks up here that you can put a portafilter in and grind right directly into a portafilter, similar to like the DF64. It's nice. It's fully aluminum, no plastic pieces, quiet motor, no vibrations. Everything about this screams incredibly high quality. Okay, let's brew some coffee. Now, before I do me a huge favor, scroll down, hit that like button down below. It takes 2 seconds. It's a huge way to support this channel and it's free. And while you're down there, let me know in the comments. I would really love to know your favorite local cafe. Give them a little shout out, give them some exposure, write them down in the comments. I'll read every single one. Subscribe if you haven't already. Let's brew some coffee. Now, while my kettle is boiling and while I'm grinding up this coffee, I want to give a huge shout out to Standard Magazine, who's the sponsor of today's video. Now, here's the deal. If you're into specialty coffee, brewing great coffee at home, you're a coffee expert, a barista, or just a home barista, it doesn't matter. Standard Magazine is an incredible resource for all of us. That's because this is a specialty coffee magazine created and published by people who love coffee just as much as all of us. Now, one of the things I actually love about Standard most is that this magazine isn't pushed out every single month. In fact, it's once a quarter. And what that means is every single quarter, you're gonna get high quality material and incredible resources. Also, you're gonna get coffee with every single order. Now, right now I'm enjoying this quarter's issue, which has a great resource article from Scott Rowsell. And he's got a great resource on water alkalinity. Now, if you know me, I'm a huge advocate for great water in your coffee. It's one of the greatest catalysts for greater coffee outside of coffee itself and a grinder. And if you want to check this out, I highly recommend it. I've got you guys covered. Use the link in the top of the description to get free international shipping and coffee with every single order. And thank you, Standard, so much for sponsoring this video. Okay, Let's dive into this. So much to say. LAGOM P64. When it comes to its burst set, right now I have the high uniformity SSP burst set. Now, there are a couple different options that you can get for this grinder. Optional has their own burst set, which currently at time of filming is this one right here. Now, this burst set is more traditional in flavor profiles. It creates a lot of body, a lot of texture. And if you're into that sort of thing, this is right down your alley for that burst set. But if you want something that's a little bit better in clarity, maybe sacrifice a little texture for that, the SSP high uniformities are really great. And then there's the third option that you can get from Optional, which is their multi-purpose burr or their unimodal burr. Now this one's recommended if you want to do filter coffee often, or you want to do more modern style espresso. Now that's because it uses a unimodal burr, which has a very tight uniformity in its grind distribution. What that means is that there's not going to be a lot of fines that create a lot of that texture that some people might love and know from espresso. Now those multi-purpose burrs were in this grinder for about 4 weeks, and I had a lot of fun with them. If you're into filter coffee brewing, or you want to do multiple different styles of brewing, maybe filter coffee and more modern style espresso, that's the perfect burr set for this grinder. And as the industry continues to grow, you'll be able to put new burrs in this grinder as new ones come available, which is that's fun, right? Nobody's gonna complain about that. That'll keep this grinder fresh and new and exciting. And if you just want to have multiple burrs in one grinder, that's fun. Now you might be wondering, is this grinder actually low retention? Absolutely. You know, there is no doubt there. I use it for about 3 weeks, putting about 120 grams in per day, and I took the burst set apart, and there was only about 0.15 grams of retention. That design is fantastic. You know, when you take this burst set apart, which is really easy to do, by the way, all you have to do is unscrew this, pop that off, and then the whole burst set just pops out. No tools, no screwdrivers, nothing like that. It's just such a nice experience. Now, like I said, retention wise, like even right now, I just ground that coffee. This is really, truly no fuss, low retention, no bellows, no doodangs, no gadgets, no gizmos. It's just low retention. You put coffee in, coffee comes out. Don't get me wrong, it has some flaws. We'll talk about those in a second. Now, the motor here is one of the quietest coffee motors I've ever heard. Now, you might be hearing a little chirping there, and that's actually very common on this grinder. What happens is either some chaff gets stuck on these sweepers of the burr themselves, or gets stuck in between the grind declumper and the burrs. And it'll sound like it's chirping. It sounds like the burrs are almost touching. It's not the case. It happens on other flat burrs too, but I did notice it even more on this grinder. It's just something you might be alarmed at if you get this grinder and you hear that. The grind forks here are good. There have been some issues where I've seen some people, depending on the portafilter, that they'll shake out and fall. Now I use the Bianca and the Flair 58 portafilters and some aftermarket ones. I've had no issues with that. So that's just a personal experience that I can't really speak to, but I know some other people have had some issues with that. Other than that, really, you know, the dose cup is fine. I would say that this could probably be slightly improved. I really love how my Niche Zero dose cup, when you flip it, it's sitting inside that portafilter. It's very hard to make a mess. This one, only the top ridge, which is about 3 millimeters, sits inside that 58 millimeter portafilter, so it can, in the flipping process while dosing your coffee into a portafilter, fall out and make a mess. It also comes in a black option, which seems to be very popular. I got the silver. I thought it was clean. It looks beautiful. Let's talk about some cons here, and then we'll talk about that DF64. Now, one of the things I don't love about this kind of grinder is that while it's a full metal design, aluminum is very soft. And when I opened this box and used the coffee grinder for the first time, I dropped this dosing cup on its base, which is very easy to do, and I have a mark on the base right away. You know, aluminum for all metals is very, very soft. My wedding ring has scratched against the RPM dial. I have a big scratch along the side of it. And even while filming this video, I've also accomplished to scratch this grinder more. For me, it's not a huge deal. It's just something to be aware of. Even the portafilter forks, after having it for about, a month and a half, 2 months, have received some wear. Not a big deal at all. You can use some 3M tape to protect that. Or you can just replace the forks for another, $50+ from Optional. Because if you're spending this much money, you might not care about that. But it's something to be aware of, especially on the black model. I could see that being even more of an issue. Maybe it would have been nice, instead of having metal on metal here, to have some kind of protection, maybe some kind of rubber coating, some kind of leather option or something like that. There's so many different opportunities and so many different materials to make this a little more wear resistant. One other note with this grinder too, it does come with some accessories, which I really love. It comes with a WDT tool, which is really great. I actually really enjoy this. A dosing funnel as well. The only con with this is you can't tamp inside of here. The dosing walls are fairly steep, which need to be so that it can be used while grinding into your portafilter. And it comes with a Ross droplet technique, or like a spray bottle to add some moisture to your beans to avoid static, which is a huge con with this grinder. It is fairly staticky if you don't use the spray bottle. This is kind of necessary, and that's kind of common with most single dosing flat burr grinders. I don't love how this says 1 to 9. I would have loved the actual RPM like the Weber Workshop key has. One other note too, if you're adding coffee beans with its dosing cup, the beans can get stuck up on this anti-popcorning disc. You know, sometimes you have to get your finger in there and actually push them in. Outside of that, for me, this is nearly perfect. If you're in the market for a flat burr coffee grinder with low retention for home, with some adjustability in RPMs, and you want a premium experience and maybe that ENDGAME coffee grinder, for me, the P64 is the grinder to recommend. There are other grinders that are more expensive, maybe better coffee grinders, but it's hard to beat the value of the P64. Which, speaking of value, let's talk about that DF64, because really that's its competitor for somebody who wants the best value out of a flat burr grinder. Now in this coffee grinder right now, which is the DF64, I have the multi-purpose burrs from SSP. And over the past 4 weeks, I've actually had these sitting side by side on my coffee bar to really compare and contrast what you're getting for your money. Now, like I said, with the P64, the workflow is incredible. Out of the box, the DF64, I just can't say the same. This is a grinder that you need to mod, okay? With 3D printed parts, which I've talked about in my DF64 video, which you can click up here and watch that. This is a great grinder, don't get me wrong, but it's not perfect out of the box. This one kind of is, all right? Let's speak about alignment. This one out of the box is so close to being perfect. You know, this might vary between grinders, but I really don't think it will. Optional has taken the time to ensure that every coffee grinder is tested out the door, and mine was nearly perfectly aligned. I didn't adjust the alignment because it was just so good. Right, that was just the experience that I had with this grinder. Out of the box, it's quiet, it's low retention, there's no fuss, right? You just get the grinder, you use it. That's not the case with the DF64. I had to align my burrs. It's louder. No need with the bellows for this grinder. A small tap with your hand as it's running kind of just pushes any coffee grounds that are needed out. No mess. Definitely with the DF64, if you add some RDT, that helps a lot. Also, the DF64 versus the P64, this one doesn't have variable RPM, which might not be a big deal for most people, but that's actually a huge selling feature. Not only is this a much quieter motor, it has a lot more flexibility and experimentation available with the grinder out of the box. You can't do that with this. Okay, so that's a big selling feature. If that doesn't matter to you, I'll go for the DF64. The grind adjustment system on here without mods is hard to read. With mods though, it's a fantastic grinder. The DF64, if you're willing to get some 3D printed parts, you can make this grinder super competitive to the P64. The nice thing with the P64 is out of the box, it's perfect. It's quiet, no mess, no need for a ton of RDT, just slightly, low retention, and you know what you put in the grinder is coming out. It's wonderful. One huge other con, you know, a lot of people have said the niche zero has been really hard to get, and that makes it something that is kind of undesirable. This is even harder to get. The P64 is super popular, and they don't make a ton of them when they do make them. I'll dare say it, this is, you know, this has kind of been labeled the niche killer. This is the niche killer. Yes, more expensive, almost, you know, twice the price depending on where you're buying this from. If you're in the budget though, this is the niche killer, because this really is the exact same workflow as a niche zero with flat burrs. And that's the selling feature. If you want flat burrs in a niche zero with variable RPM and full metal body with a reputable company like Option O, you know, I've been critical on some coffee grinders recently like the Weber Workshop Key, the Eureka Oro, but for me, I'm nitpicking with this grinder. I really do think it checks most of the boxes. This will be my daily driver for the foreseeable future. Now, before you go, let me know everything you feel about the P64 down in the comments below. Do you like how it's designed? Do you like the idea of 64 64 millimeter flat burrs in this grinder. While not the biggest burr set, is it big enough for your needs? Is this a grinder that suits your needs, or is it missing the mark completely? Would you prefer a conical burr set to a flat burr set? Any thoughts that you have, let me know in the comments down below. I'll be reading every single one of those. Also, if you've gotten this far in the video, let me know by hitting that like button. It's a huge way to support the channel for absolutely $0. It takes 2 seconds to do it. Please do. And while you're down there, let me know in the comments if you've watched this video by writing "I love coffee." That'll just let me know that you are one of those select few, the chosen few, who watch these videos in their entirety. Love you guys all. Thanks for watching this. We'll see you guys all in the next video. Peace.